today in class, we went over Quick Story Part 2. Now, it's important that you are in class or at least watch the screencast for Quick Story Part 1 because you need to do that before you can do this part. So this worksheet is simply directions. Everything that you are actually completing will be on the original Quick Story paper that we introduced in class yesterday, this one. So today in class, students paired up with another person. They switched laptops, read each other's narrative stories, and then they asked each other 4 questions. Now, if you miss class, this obviously will be hard, so you can either ask a teacher when you get back to switch to read your story and ask these questions, or even perhaps a parent or a friend outside of the classroom. The 4 questions are these right here. Question 1. So your partner is supposed to read your story, and then they have to choose something from your story and ask you to add detail about a particular sense. So sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. So the person reading your story will choose which sense they think needs to be described more. So for example, my story is about a car crash, so maybe they wanted to know how I felt once I was in the accident or as it was happening. So that would be their question. Question 2, the person who read your story needs to ask you for more detail about a particular aspect of your story. So again, for my example of a car accident, maybe somebody wants more detail about my friend who I was going to see, or perhaps they want more detail about the trip that I said I took very briefly in my original paragraph. So that's where they would ask me. Question number 3, oops. The person who read your paper needs to ask you to describe a particular character from your story in more detail. So my story, I mentioned my friend Erica very briefly. So the person might ask me who she is, how long I've known her, what our relationship is like. And then question number 4, the person reading your paper should ask you to expand on something in your story that happened after your climax or your turning point. So again, in my story, if my climax was getting into the accident, hitting the gas post, they might ask me, well, what took place afterwards? Did police come to the scene? Did I call my parents? Those would be ideas. So these are the steps we followed in class. Step 1, we opened the assignment. Step 2, students then copied these 4 statements right here. So you highlight, right click, and copy. And then we pasted them to our document from yesterday, their original quick story, underneath the paragraph that you each wrote. So that very top paragraph, you're going to paste those 4 statements just like this. So not underneath my examples below this, but underneath your paragraph, because this is where you're going to take notes after your partner reads your story. So then step 3, you're going to switch laptops with a partner. So in your case, if you're not in the classroom, again, you can ask either Ms. Hipp or myself to read your story when we're back in the classroom, or again, even a parent or a friend outside of the classroom. So they'll read your story, and then that person is going to ask you those 4 questions that we went over here that they have to apply specifically to your story. And when they're asking you those questions, and this is step 6, this is where you are going to take notes. So when somebody's asking me a question, let's just say for my sense description, they want to know how I felt after I hit the gas line, I would simply just take notes of their question. How did I feel after I hit gas post? And the reason I'm doing this, just taking note of their question, is so that after I talk with my partner, I have time to go back and add these details to my paper without forgetting what they think I need to add. Because again, they're asking you these questions so that your story makes complete sense to anybody reading it. There's no missing parts. So after you take notes on your computer, step 7 is when you're going to go back and add that information directly to your story wherever it applies, and you're going to highlight that new information in green. So if you scroll down, you'll see my example. So this is an example of my notes when I had a partner read my story. So my sense description, my partner wanted to know how I felt after I hit the gas post and someone told me I had to get out of my car right away. So I literally just typed what she wanted to know. And then in my paper, I added that where it applies, which mine is towards the bottom. So I added, my heart was racing because I didn't know what was happening. That's when this stranger said I hit a gas line and I needed to get out of the car. Then my partner wanted to know, for my added detail, why I decided to get a tattoo in California and why I was even on that trip with friends in the first place. So I went back to where that was in my story, which was the beginning, and I added a little bit of information, which really is my exposition. Going to California was my first vacation with just friends. We had just graduated college and this was a present to ourselves. While there, we decided to do something spontaneous. Together, we decided to get tattoos. We all got flowers on our hips. So that's where I added that information. Then my partner wanted to know more about my friend Erica. So I only mentioned her briefly in my original paragraph, so she asked me to expand on my relationship with her. So I went and found that part of my story where it applies and added, Erica always thought I was a goody-good, so I was extra excited to show her what I had done since she was not on the trip. She had just moved earlier that month, so I was going to her new apartment the day after I got back into town. So now I explained my relationship with her, and even the reason I got lost on the way to her house is because she moved. So I clarified that information. And then my partner wanted to know what happened that made the road close down after I hit the gas line. Was there an explosion? So I found where that applied to my paper, and I wrote that detail. There were several police cars, ambulances, Night Corps gas trucks, and a tow truck at the scene, ensuring everyone's safety. They even closed the nearby restaurants. After inspection of my car, it was declared totaled. A police officer called my parents to break the news for me. I feared what their anger would look like, but was surprised when they were more happy I was okay than upset about what happened. So that is exactly what you're going to do after you have a partner or a teacher ask questions about what they feel you need to add to your story, and then you add that detail directly in your story and highlight that information